if you are trans, if you are Black, if you are a creator, you can literally come into this space knowing that that's what makes you a part of it and that there's nothing dividing us.
I thought that we would call this episode "A Family That Works Together Stays Together." What I really thought of when we were calling the show that is that, especially nowadays, the working environment needs to incorporate elements of what we traditionally associate with family. Like, we need support, we need love, we need care and attention to one another to do a good job. And so, I think in the last few months, we have seen that that one of the impacts of systemic racism all over our country, but also especially in kind of the entertainment and advertising world, can really rob people of that network and that family. And so our guest today is someone who is doing something about that. And so it makes me really excited to introduce Daniela Carter to you, who is an LGBTQIA activist and a creative producer. So welcome, Daniela.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be with you.
And of course, we'll work our way around to the nuts and bolts of Daniela's guest book and how it works. I for sure want to mention that we're talking to you in conjunction with your relationship with the creative agency Special Guest. So I want to hear about what that relationship is like and how it was formed.
Me and Aaron met. Aaron Duffy, the executive creative director, co-founder of Special Guest. We met on the Papel Canada project. And he just recently said to me that he had never been exposed to a trans person, let alone a Black trans woman. And from what he learned from that project, that he felt like he wanted to personally, right, be in my life and find a meaningful way to uplift me. Without the unwavering, support that I get from Aaron, none of this would have been possible.
So exactly how does Daniela's guest book work for those of us that haven't experienced it, that are, watching this show?
So when the way in which Daniela guest book works is that I reached out to my network of creative BIPOC folks, and I asked them to submit a wide range of different content. And so with that being said, I was able to curate a list of different narratives, ranging from the first spot you'll see on the platform is "We're All in This Together," which I created and executive produced. And that is a narrative that was at the beginning of COVID sent a message to the transgender community, a message of encouragement, letting them know that they weren't forgotten about. And so from that, I went on and I asked all my people in the community, like you, to come on and help to amplify their voice. Because I understand that even if you have maybe just 100 followers, but those 100 followers are people who are all in executive positions, that means that there's potential to greenlight equitable opportunity there.
Before we go much further, I do want to say that I know that you were inspired early on in your career by seeing Janet Mock on the cover of Marie Claire. And it reminded me that one of the things that we often try to do with Listen In and with this show is just provide inspiration to other talent out there by seeing people like you now,
For me, so much of what I do now as a creative producer, and the reason why I got into it, is because I'm walking by a newsstand. It was the first time that I had ever seen a trans woman on the front cover of a magazine, let alone one who reflected who I wanted to become in the world. And so I remember from that moment and looking at her saying, like, that is who I am. I am not the trans girl that ended up dead in a Law and Order episode. I am not the person who will be on Jerry Springer getting my wig pulled off. But what I will become is somebody that looks just like Janet Mock. And what I want to become is not the person that the world has told me I'm deserving to be. And so I was able to connect with Janet, and she connected me to community activists. And so much of my career was spent in the early stages of activism, like I like to say my activism career. It was about just trying to get understanding. And I knew how important it was to create a bridge for those other women that reflected that journey that did not look like mine, right? Because trans is not like this monolithic journey. And so when I think about how the ways in which, as a creator, I was going to go from having my story exploited to how I was going to be a part of allowing a narrative to represent not just one specific demographic of the community, because that's not going to free us. I don't want to talk about the problems. I believe that when we talk about the problems, it pushes the people who want to be a part of the solution away, because it is just so overbearing. It feels like, how can I be a part of something that I don't experience, that I don't have, you know, the necessary history or relationships with those people to feel I can have impact. And so I feel like when I show the narrative in a very humanizing way that says, look, they look just like you. They're living next door to you. These are your friends, these are your family members, these are people you'll come to love, but you won't know how to love them from a more, I feel like, a problem-based conversation. But you'll know how to love them when we see the solution and we realize that it's something so selfless, and it's what we do every day, and it's through conversation.
It's an amazing mission, and I
I
think I
hope
think one
that
of
made
the
sense. I went on a
it
tangent.
no, that makes a lot of sense. And it gives us the picture of like the way that you see this. You've been able to see now this really long and extended path, to the goals that you have for yourself and for the world. And I would just call out that, to me as an outsider observing it, one of the extraordinary things that I don't look past is that you, having achieved the power of telling your own story to some degree, like finding a path for yourself, making a path for yourself, you then went on to look sideways and backward and everywhere and go, and who else can I pull with me? Which is not something that everyone, does. But if more of us did it, it would make, for more of that kind of family in the broadest sense that helps the world get better, right? I wanted to ask you, though, about a few things. For those that might not know some of the high points in your career, can you just bullet out for us? You saw Janet Mock on the cover of Marie Claire, and then sometime later, I know you got to participate in the T Word. So can you hit
Yes,
some of those milestones of what you've done in your career?
of course. So at 16 years old, I was a part of helping to write and produce an off-Broadway show called A Place for the Night for a nonprofit organization by the name of Possibility Project, where I go past this newsstand and I see Janet Mock on the cover of Marie Claire. And I reach out to Janet, and Janet at the time was just finishing up her first memoir, Redefining Realness, My Path to Womanhood. Um, I go and I work for Janet Mock's book signing party, and I'm there having casual conversation with her guests. So here I am in the room of awesome people, and one of those awesome people turns out to be Laverne Cox. And I'm having a very passionate conversation about what I would like to do for the trans community, and maybe using some of my own experience of navigating through foster care, being homeless. And so she was like, oh, I want to introduce you to someone, and I think you'd be great for this project. And again, like, not knowing, ignorant to mainstream media, pop culture, I get on the call, and I can only describe it the way it felt for me, which is I'm like on this Skype call, and it's about like six white people. Literally, like, at this time, I wasn't really even exposed to white people that much, other than my school teacher. And this was more personal, right? Like a personal environment. Like, I'm on this talking about my experiences, and I'm just like, why is she talking to me with all these white people? No, I swear. And little did I know that that was going to become the MTV Emmy Award winning The T Word. And I believe that everything from that moment on, the universe took care of me because literally, from the T Word happening from just through a regular, like passionate, conversation about what I had hoped for the world became a moment of what I was doing for the world. And with that moment, I was able to go on and I was watching a TED talk. And because I love TED. TED was like my number one thing growing up as a kid. My biggest milestone, to be completely honest with you, is that as a trans woman of color at this time in the world, where every day that I turn on the news, and if it is not my blackness that is showing me that is being extinguished through the media, that my transness is. And so to have built a platform that allows all of my identities to come to the table and be a force of power that allows every identity to show up just as a creator and not carry that struggle is I believe, the biggest success I've been able to achieve. That I am creating something that if you are trans, if you are Black, if you are a creator, you can literally come into this space knowing that that's what makes you a part of it and that there's nothing dividing us. So, and that is my biggest achievement, that I was able to bring all of my identities to the table and invite everyone in. I remember now the moment in which why I was given that reflection of Janet Mock, because it
Yeah.
was the moment that was meant to free so many other people. So
And not it's part of that journey for all of us is uh, how those moments that we realize that we're actually doing it, are so powerful and I think one of the things that your story suggests for people watching this show and hearing it is how if you can find that network and that family to support you, which is something that you're actually helping to create now for a lot of people, the key is to just keep moving forward, finding that next right step, and these moments like the one that you're having now can come to you. You're opening the door for everything to click in your life and in your journey.
I think what it says though is at this time and why it was important and how it's formulated, it was because of the civil rights uprising, and I think that right. So while so many people are burying their families, while so many people are losing a sense of hope that their families can achieve, right, the so-called American dream. Um, Whatever that may look like for so many different people. I think that what Daniela Guest book has shown them is that while we're losing our families, we can still build new ones. And so I think that for me, Daniela Guest book is going to tell Black creative families that my extended family is helping to change the dynamics of my biological family. And I hope that that's what we do because as a creative community, we're all family. You know,
But maybe it'd be interesting for you to envision, like, what should have got, how do you envision Daniela's guest book becoming a part of my path as a white advertising executive and leading to the vision that you have for the project?
So I believe that what this platform does, it helps to foster relationships with major brands, production companies, and industry leaders, people who can greenlight things. And that's why I
Yeah.
make sure to only connect the artists to those people who can greenlight things. So that way there's no, again, false sense of hope. And feeling like what felt like, during the civil rights uprising is these false governmental promises that this time around it'd be something different. And so if this is a conversation you are serious about, that it doesn't just seems marketable for you, and you see if this is a conversation that doesn't just feels marketable for you, then I think that when you walk into your office, okay, and you see your executive team, okay, and there's nobody there that's Black, the issue is still the issue is still alive in your community. It is the issue is thriving in your community that you believe you're creating, this diverse and inclusive kind of community. So when you say, what could you do? The next time you go to hire someone, why is it that most of the time the people that get through are the people who are white? There are so many qualified Black people that you feel like, oh, maybe, how do we get access to them? Look for them.
Daniela's guest book. So
Yeah.
instead, I go
I
to the
mean, you can
website.
use Daniela's guest book, but I think that I want I want to get to a day where Daniela's guest book, I love that it's created. I would love for it to be sustained. But I think that it would make me feel good the day that Daniela guest book doesn't have to exist. That, so that's what I'm hoping, that this can become a liaison, of course, of some sort to those companies who are struggling to find Black creatives. But I want them to take the initiative too. For example, one of my artists that I highlighted this season, Lucina Fisher. Lucina is an award-winning journalist. Okay, she worked over at ABC News, People Magazine, Oprah Magazine, a long list of amazing, amazing accolades. But she too is an emerging artist as a filmmaker because no one, and I mean no one, is really willing to support her and her projects and give her the funding that she needs in order to carry out the narratives in which she would like to uplift. Okay? And so she had to focus on being a successful journalist for a white man, but when she wanted to become an independent filmmaker, she had to go back into the struggling Black artist community. And so for me, a person as successful as she is, why is it that the industry still refuses to create access for her? Because there are people overlooking the issue. They're seeing her as this exceptional voice of opportunity only when it benefits them.
I was just going to confirm that I think that the really important and special thing about this conversation today about Daniela's guest book is that you've created the tool to do these things to be that is just a uncomplicated direct access and relationship between people in a position to greenlight and Black talent who are creating every day. And so, it's just totally different than creating the most beautiful Black Lives Matter social posts that we can make to affirm that we care. I think you're calling us to sit to care by hiring, and giving us the tool to do that.
I just feel like that's where we are. And that's what I want Daniela's guest book to be. If you have more, institutional power than I do and influence in the industry, I challenge you to do it. I challenge you to outshine Daniela's guest book because then my mission will still be upheld. And so, and that is the beauty of this is that I can go on and still do this because in some ways I'll do it with or without the support of the industry because I understand the importance of it. And I'm going to challenge anybody who can accept me to start finding a way to accept those people who need it. you
Yeah.
know, because I have the network to be sustained as an artist, to be self-sufficient, and I'm not saying that being arrogant, but that is true.
Yeah.
I do, if I knew before, I'm sure I could have done this before a special guest. You know, but it took this moment to show me that it was important to step outside of my own access, okay, and build a community that will not only have to look just like me, but look like the community in which I serve, the identity that I serve, the multiple at that, you know,
Mm-hmm.
that I can give those identities their own power and their own access, because I'm giving Black people access, and I'm giving Black trans people access, Black queer people access. And a lot of times, those two things are compartmentalized in a way that I'm only allowed to show up some days just as trans and not be Black. And so I am giving what I believe is essentially the Black creative community, everyone who falls under that umbrella, an invite to the table. And I'm telling you to leave your sexual orientation at home, leave your gender identity at home, because those will be the things that people will use to divide us. But bring the thing that makes us all a part of this. When you come to Daniela Guest book, be a creative. That's all it takes to be a part of this. So you can't say this time, well, I'm white, I don't know how to have the conversation. But don't have the conversation about the issues on race. Show people that you're using your power to uplift that race. Don't have the conversation, in all seriousness, about the things in which we all know are affecting, okay, the African American creative community, the BIPOC creative community. Because when you go to work and you don't see no Black people there, but you're working on campaigns to stand in solidarity with them, you know the problem, you see the problem, and you work on the problem. Now, how about you work on the solution? And the solution is not just for brands, it's for those people.
Wow. That last few minutes, you just nailed some singers, man. That is so true. You know, I think the last thing I would say is kind of, I'm just going to say it. It's not. I think it's similar to what you were saying, and probably not ultimately as powerful. But I'll share it with you just because it's my take on it. Is like, you really are, you know, out there creating family, but maybe more importantly, you're creating families that do what families do, which is really nurture humans and human progress, you know? And it's viral, right? You know, like your vision of it is I create this tool that allows you, you know, Matt Bretz, host of Listen In, to go back into your community and make another cell, you know, another opportunity for a Black creative to be a part of this community and then grow more Black creatives here until, as you said, there's a time that because we've reached the space where, you know, we fairly represent the balance of different diversity within the entire, you know, the whole country that we live in, we maybe don't need Daniela's guest book. But for now, it's like a very practical start, you know,
Yes.
so kudos for that.
Thank you. And I
Um,
think, oh, sorry. And I was going to tell you that when I say that we may not need a Daniela's guest book, that the part of it in which serves as a liaison, okay, you know, that component of it may not be there, but it would always go on to celebrate Black creatives. And yeah, that it will always do. And so, because I think that what I hope to do is send a message to the Black creative community, the BIPOC, excuse me, creative community, is that when these government practices, these systematic things are dividing us, it fuels the division that they need us to have in order to continue to disenfranchise us. But what Daniela Guestbook does is it allows you to leave the part of your identity that makes you feel that you can't relate at home. But bring the thing that makes you relatable. Bring the thing that makes you a part of this community. And let that be the reasons why you shine. Don't carry the burden. Carry the love. Carry the creativity because you're deserving of it.
Thanks so much for joining us for this episode of Listen In. You'll always find us streaming on LinkedIn, along with live chat comments from myself and guests. After the stream is over, we archive the show here on our LinkedIn page for Eisenberg, and you'll also find the episodes at AListDaily.com. So have a great week, and as always, keep your ears on.